Okay, so this presentation is a design study on linking electronic dictionaries to processed corpus data. I'll get you started into the lexicographic motivation, framework, our view on the role of corpus data, and some of the aspects of a tool that links data to corpus material. So basically the boring stuff. And then Danie Prinsloo will show a few examples, talk about the architecture, and discuss the next steps in that type of work. The lexicographic motivation, and I think we have heard a lot of that already, has to do with lexical selection and the question of how can a user, also an advanced user, find the best expression for the idea he or she wants to put into the context of an upcoming text. So quasi-synonyms are an example. I have just put up German examples which all mean something like importance, relevance, significance, and so on, or collocate selection. So what is the appropriate adjective for Depression? Is it groß, schwer, tief, or what else? The framework in which we are thinking about these things is, on the one hand, inspired by practical needs. We want to design a tool linking dictionary data to multiply annotated corpora, which is work currently going on. Theoretically, it's embedded in a user-centered approach as it is advocated, among others, by the lexicographic function theory. And formally, it is part of an ongoing cooperation project with both Professor Prinsloo and Professor Bothma and a number of colleagues from South Africa. So if you place yourself in the view of the lexicographical function theory, on the one hand, it is clear that the lexicographer, now I'll try to use that pointing mechanism. The only question is how? No? Oh, maybe I shouldn't use that pointing mechanism. You know, technology. So you have a lexicographer collecting data, and he does so to produce, to produce different dictionaries for different, thank you. Oh, that is wonderful. So now I need to work two-handed. Oh, yeah.
Doesn't work over here.
Gets even more complicated. Okay, so old-style technology would have that you've got different user types, like for dictionary, for text production, for text reception, or also for cognitive purposes. And obviously, you want these to be served by different types of dictionaries. So that means that the lexicographical data you have collected need to be filtered appropriately, and you need to present them in an appropriate way, not only by selecting the appropriate ones, but also by giving efficient access and a user group adapted presentation. Now, what is the role of corpus data in that whole context? Obviously, one is to provide raw material for the lexicographer, and the other is to provide data which could then again be piped through the filtering in terms of user needs, and which would, by use of natural language processing tools, very much in line with what we heard a moment ago, complement the lexicographic data collected already by the lexicographer. If you look at work by Sven Tarp, in two recent publications, he has looked at different types of electronic dictionaries, basically distinguishing, say, old-style dictionaries which just reproduce print material online, type 1, the ones which have quick access but still follow the print model, type 2, and then the more interesting ones for which he talks about dynamic articles having dynamic data and offering, and that is what you have on the right side, links to relevant websites or which recreate and represent relevant data. And what does that mean, recreating and representing the data? Basically, the idea is to handle corpus data very much in line with this user-centered approach. So again, to filter them in an appropriate way such that users will get access only to those corpus data which really serve the need they are looking for. And I was very pleased this morning with the presentation about examples and the usefulness of examples and the need for having both examples for text production as opposed to examples for text reception. So in a way, this is very much in line with our ideas. What kind of data? Single words, word combinations, collocations, multi-word terms, and so on, and their linguistic properties. And what we have been looking at, to some extent, are the formal properties like morphosyntactic and syntactic ones, and then in particular, and that is what the examples will be dealing with, the kind of properties of lexical data which you can extract from metadata in the corpora, so information about the registers, genres, text types, domains, where the things show up, or also about the behavior of the items on the timeline as well. What we haven't attacked for quite obvious reasons of still natural language technology being a bit problematic in that respect is a detailed analysis of semantics. Actually, Jörg Asmussen, in a contribution to the International Handbook of Lexicography, which is currently in press, has discussed in quite some detail the issues related to that, so I won't go into that right now. Re-representing or representing data then also means to present them in a user-adequate way, obviously. And the types of access to the linked data we are contemplating are both access to single information items, so single words, single collocations, and their behavior, as well as the comparison between two or more items. At the beginning, I talked about contrastive synonymy, and that would be the case where you would want to compare items with each other, for example, with respect to their pragmatic or frequency properties. Examples which have been dealt with by other people include valency and construction patterns. So there is a recent paper by Stefan Engelberg and collaborators on the distribution of valency patterns of certain verbs across text types, domains, and genres. And we will focus, for example, on domain repetition and frequency trajectories. The examples come from both Afrikaans and German, and I hand over to Danie Prinsloo, who will give you more details about these examples.
Okay, our examples mostly come from, in the case of Afrikaans, from the Media 24 news archive, and then also certain religious texts and other sources, and as you can see there, not yet as you can see now. On the side for German, and I'm just going to take you through a few of these examples, single words and also collocation aspects, with a few comments on each of these. Firstly, focusing on single words across domains, two examples to quickly look at. The German for polling station, Wahllokal, where you can see, and not surprisingly, of course, that 75.8% of all occurrences is in the political domain. Then the bottom one, the performance, where you can see the breakdown there in terms of percentage, 47% literature culture, 21.2% in economy, 9.4 politics, and 8.8 in science. That gives one an immediate idea of the percentage breakdown. Now, what we've also done is, in the case of Afrikaans, we made a study of Afrikaans words frequency behavior patterns over about 30 years, where we divided it or expressed it in terms of 5 million word chunks to see what will be the relevance, in this case for lexicography, amongst others also in the application or in the allocation of lexicographic labels. And just to warm up the system, we decided to look at South African politicians, President Thabo Mbeki, the F.W. de Klerk, and Nelson Mandela, for example. And it was not surprising to see that these frequency trajectories more or less coincide nicely with their terms of office. Then to the more serious business, when it comes to Afrikaans, for the lexicographer, the decision or the selection and treatment of fix versus using the English word AIDS as is. And a lot of debates on this type of issue, but in the end, I think the frequency or the trajectories speak for themselves, and as you can see, AIDS is winning the battle easily. That sounds strange. The word AIDS used much more frequently. It's upcoming use. The same for CD laserskyf. Same thing. Purists especially were very emphatic about the idea that we should push laserskyf as much as possible. But in the end, as you can clearly see there, it's CD winning the battle. Then another one, possible to read there. It's the word neef in Afrikaans, which simply means nephew. And what is interesting about this is that in all historical texts, for about 95% of its usage, it's not about nephew, it is about an addressing form to someone. So I tried to disambiguate them at some stage by looking, for example, at my nephew. And that didn't help at all, because it seems as if in those days you addressed someone as, my nephew, let me tell you this, and things like that. So I had to revert to his or her nephew to get some significance in the analysis of the data. Okay, the next example there, Professor Heid has referred to it already. Contrasting the three words there, relevance, significance, and wichtigheid. And you can see now from the next three slides how the significance in each case, in boldface there, showing where they are in fact used with more than expected or overwhelmingly frequent. Look at the next case for significance. There it is, 6.9 and 4.2 in the case of sciences and economy. And in the last case, a 2.7 in the history domain. More examples, this time in terms of depression and typical collocations there. In terms of politics and economy, there you see the collocations versus in terms of science. And then also for the German, for European, where you have the collocations and combinations in terms of politics, European Union, and in terms of culture, there. All these things coming with a clear difference if you compare the domains. Then another Afrikaans example, quite interesting, the word diens, which simply means service, and this time we compared newspaper data and religion-related texts. I didn't break them up into percentages because the differences are clear. So deliberately, if you take things like in service or year or years of service, of course, you don't get any significant results. They are equally frequently used over whatever text you would select for your comparison. However, if you go to things like better service or bad service or good service or on duty, then you see that it's overwhelmingly or almost all exclusively in the case of better service and bad service used in newspaper corpora. I think the idea is that if you look at bad service, that a reverend is not supposed to, not even considered to give you bad service, so that's why there's nothing. So those of you who might not be lexicographers or reverends, do not give bad service, please. Then good service, then unselfish, special service, deacon service, there exactly, it's the other way around now. Overwhelmingly huge occurrences in a religious text, but zero in news media, especially things like municipalities and town councils. They just don't give any special service. All right. Few remarks then on our ongoing work on the implementation of the prototype, the architectural sketch. Okay, it's in principle a web service-based approach, a dictionary web service, corpus query web service, and additional tools as web services, statistics, visualizations. Requirements on resources, a dictionary marked up for relevant corpus access, set of pre-established corpus query patterns for things like collocation extraction, for metadata retrieval, etc. Issues, briefly, of graphical user interface design requirements. Query should be paraphrased in natural language by type. No need for users to manipulate a query language. Data should be displayed as part of the look and feel of the dictionary, with a warning about their status where necessary, possibly in quantities easy to absorb. For example, more inadequate visualizations, e.g. time, trajectory graphs, etc. Okay, and then our conclusion. We have shown motivation and examples for potentially useful ways of linking dictionary and corpus for text production, underlying linguistic assumptions, issues for interface design, advances over the state of art, use of metadata to provide data on pragmatics, foreseeing several different types of corpus queries, in particular comparisons of items, and elements of statistical generalization. Implementation status, web services are tested, dictionary, corpus query, auxiliary tools, and graphical user interface still need to be implemented as web services. And finally, some future work. Better use of the computationally analyzed corpora, parse data, e.g. to find valency properties and collocations. More analysis of the impact of language varieties, register, domain, specialized text, text type, still a lot of work that we have to do there, but I think things are more or less running smoothly. Prototype of a graphical user interface for different query types, test with users, and we thank you.